Hi, this is John Grant in Washington, D.C. for the February 22nd, 2016 REI Policy Weekly Update. This week I want to focus primarily on why it is important to have a very strong presence in Washington, D.C. And I'm going to focus on some breaking news that came out that I find a little bit disconcerting, but I think it should also rally the industry to get behind this effort and really to understand why it's important to have permanent representation in DC. You know, I can tick off some of the successes that we've had in past years, but I'm not sure it really translates, but I hope today I'll sort of get across why it's important. A couple administrative things. Our website, www.reipolicy.com, is essentially up and running. We're going to make a few more tweaks to it, but you can subscribe to the newsletter at that site. You can also link to our YouTube channel and our Facebook page. The Facebook page is under the name of our newsletter, Distressed Property Monthly. But again, that's reipolicy.com to subscribe to the newsletter, which funds this effort. And it's also a great way to get a lot more detail about the things that I bring up during these videos. And there's other things that I cover in the newsletter that I don't cover in the videos. But a lot of it is very forward-looking information for investors that we get from Washington. I came across an item today. Bank of America is starting a 3% down payment program in concert with Freddie Mac. And one of the things that we have talked about in these videos was the prediction that, you know, with FHA doing this 3% down payment plan, others would soon follow, and we're starting to see that. I think that risk bodes well long-term for investors. We also saw an uptick in 30-day delinquencies. There's going to be more on the newsletter about that in this coming month. So we continue to see some positive signs and positive potential for distressed property investors. But as a DC guy, when I read the BofA article, something struck me. It was the fact that there was a third party involved in the deal, and it was a North Carolina-based nonprofit venture firm. You know, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but North Carolina struck me because North Carolina is the home to one of the largest critics of this industry, the Center for Responsible Lending. They have absolutely vilified this industry, the banking industry, pretty much anyone who makes money they hate. And they say they do it on behalf of consumers. This organization was founded by a man named Martin Eakes. I want you to remember that name because it's going to come back later. But you know, I've dealt with them back when I was doing a lot of state work, and federally, you know, they have certainly while we've certainly had some success with FHFA and the short sale program and the number of other things. You can certainly attribute many of the problems that we face to Center for Responsible Lending and other like-minded groups that, you know, accuse the industry of being predatory and things like that. So, but it struck me that a North Carolina group was involved in this North Carolina nonprofit venture involved in 3% down payment loans. So I looked into it a little bit and made a couple calls, and I found out who runs this firm that is now in the business of handing out 3% down payment loans. Now, mind you, Center for Responsible Lending previously considered this type of stuff predatory, and they would talk about how banks preyed on potential homeowners with these offers. Then when our industry came in to help clean up the mess, they criticized us. So it must be nice to be them. They don't actually do anything, but they get to criticize everybody. Now, you'll never guess who runs this nonprofit venture firm in North Carolina that is partly handing out these 3% down payment loans. Martin Eakes, the guy who founded the Center for Responsible Lending. So when we think of consumer groups, it's important to understand that they don't stand for actual consumer protections. Look, a lot of the things that investors do are clearly in the interest of distressed property buyers. There's no question about that. Getting them out of a jam that really no one else can, and then rebuilding the home, getting it into good shape, and then finding a qualified buyer to reside in it. This helps communities and has a lot of benefits to it beyond just getting a qualified homeowner in it. In fact, there was an article today talking about how abandoned properties, and this is something that when I went to Congress years ago was talking about, abandoned properties have become a haven where murders, sexual assaults, and other crimes are taking place. We told people this. And the consumer groups knew about this too. But instead of dealing with that, they wanted to get this plan together for Mr. Eakes and his little fund, probably not so little, down in North Carolina. Because you see, these consumer groups, they're not in it for the consumers, they're in it for themselves. This isn't a fight over what's best for consumers. They are in a fight over money, your money. They criticizing you and lying about you is a game to them, with the end of it being they take business away from our industry and keep it for themselves. So, to put it rather bluntly, in my opinion, this was an orchestrated heist of this really screwed over the banks, because this is one of the main critics of it, and now they're in that business. So, I think that right there demonstrates to you why it's important to have someone in D.C. who knows what they're doing, who sees the larger picture about what's going on. Now, look, like I said, I think this 3% plan is good for investors because I think the default rate will be high. There's no question about that. But we need to have political coverage when our folks are going and saving these folks from these horrible offers, that they're protected from groups like the Center for Responsible Lending. And it's very critical in our media work to keep talking about, these types of relationships. The fact that the person who founded the Center for Responsible Lending is now handing out 3% down payment loans. That is absolutely stunning. The hypocrisy of that, it's amazing. But, welcome to Washington. But anyway, listen, that's the update for this week. Again, reipolicy.com. Please subscribe to the newsletter. It's $99 for 12 months. You get great information. You're supporting a great cause. Also, visit our YouTube page, subscribe to the channel, and you can also like our Facebook page. And if you're not on that, you can get on that as well. Okay? Thanks a lot. We'll have another update next week.